150 people across the street. And when the hearse got close, they started clapping and jeering. And then eggs were produced, and they pelted the hearse with eggs. And the cars with the grieving family coming after, they get pelted with eggs, and they were all clapping and shouting and laughing and cheering as this grieving family were passing by. I was on the other side of the street, and I could see right into their faces. Now, the second thing we'll look at here then is, how do we get it? So God has a solution to man's problem. But the third thing is, man has a decision about whether or not he's going to receive that solution. And again, men will deny all of these things. First of all, they'll deny that their sin is serious enough. Are you good? Do you consider yourself a good person? Oh yes, I'm a good person. Not being honest. Do you remember such and such a date, late at night, when you went out and you did this and you did that and the other thing? Do you remember when you had that opportunity, a crime of opportunity, an opportunistic crime, or maybe you saw something that was unguarded, you stole it, you took it home. People are thieves, you know. I was cutting, when was that? A couple of years ago, I was cutting the grass, and I had my earphones on, you know. Keep the noise of the lawnmower out, right? And I think I finished one section or something happened that I took my earphones off and I put them on the fence post. Wrong move. I came back and they were gone. So if somebody stops in their car and says, look, there's a set of earphones. Let me nip out there and grab them. And then I walked over. But people do that all the time. People will steal things from you. You've got to be guarded. Now, you know, depending on where you live, but we've never got broken into, thankfully, but there's always that possibility because people will steal it out of your head. Have you ever stolen anything? Yeah, I have too. Because that's what we are. We're sinners, you see. Let's read a little bit at the bottom of page 28. Jesus paid a debt that he did not owe. We owe a debt we cannot pay. This payment that Christ made for all, however, is not transferred to our individual account until we personally receive him as our Savior. Okay, I'm trying to make that as clear as we can here. But people will deny that they're sinners. They will deny there's a need. That's basically liberalism. Everybody's good. They blame it on the environment. They've never tasted evil. Many liberally thinking people are that way. Many of the people that got killed on October the 7th, these were quite liberally minded Jews who were living close to the Gaza Strip. And the one that we just, the body came home there, last week or week before, he would go into Gaza and bring people to the hospitals in Israel. He was a peacemaker. He was so kind and gracious, and he was trying to help the Palestinian people. And they kidnapped him, and they murdered him in cold blood. I heard his wife speak at his funeral, and she said this. She says, we were wrong. Because people, and we should all have compassion for everybody, but you've got to understand there is such a thing as evil in the world. And if you've ever been in a city, many people have not been in a city, you should learn it in the schoolyard, that there are bullies, there are people who are just bad. They'll do bad because they're just bad. If you grow up in a place like Northern Ireland, you will see evil. Talked about this with someone just this past week. When I was about 12 years old, my mummy and I, we used to have a place called Ardoyne, which is an IRA hotbed. And this time we'd actually moved away. For some reason, we were in a shop just across the street from this area called Ardoyne. It was a bottleneck. Protestants to go to the rest of Belfast would have to come through this IRA hotbed. There was only one road that went through it. And so that area is on the other side where we used to live. And we were across the street in the shop, and Mummy was doing grocery shopping. And we came out, and a big old crowd had gathered across the street. And we just stood at the door of the shop, and we looked up the street, and here was a hearse. A funeral was coming. And the funeral was for a man that the IRA had shot dead like 3 or 4 days before in the bus station. And our street, I used to play in the buses. We used to go and try to get on the buses and stuff, but when I was a wee boy. But here came his hearse. And there was a crowd of maybe 100, 150 people across the street. And when the hearse got close, they started clapping and jeering. And then eggs were produced, and they pelted the hearse with eggs. And the cars with the grieving family coming after, they get pelted with eggs, and they were all clapping and shouting and laughing and cheering as this grieving family were passing by. I was on the other side of the street, and I could see right into their faces. I'll never forget it. That's what you call evil. And the stuff that's going on in Gaza, when they parade these, think of these hostages, right? They're being starved to death. They've been raped and mutilated, and now they're paraded in front. And here's the Gazan citizens watching Hamas hand over the prisoners, and they're playing music. It's a festival. It's evil. There's such a thing as evil. But people deny that. So they deny man has got a problem. They deny this. They deny that God has a solution to man's problem. They'll talk about religion. They'll talk about this, that, and the other thing. But when it comes to the substitutionary death of Christ, they leave that out. We've said this before many times, whether traditional church or contemporary church, many times it's all about the worship, about attending church and going through the motions, and in the traditional churches and singing the old hymns and all of that. But when it comes to the blood of Christ and salvation, the preacher never mentions it. Never mentions it. How many times I've knocked on doors in Northern Ireland, and little old ladies would come to the door, and she says, and I'd say who it was, and she says, "Oh, I go to church." "What church do you go to?" "I go to Hyde Park Presbyterian Church." "Well, that's wonderful. Well, let me ask you something. Are you a saved Presbyterian?" "Oh, no, son. No. She says, "I've been going to that church for 40 years. What are they hearing in there? They're hearing how to follow Christ, but they're not hearing salvation. They're not hearing about sin and the blood of Christ and salvation." See, lots of lost people will have no problem worshiping God. And by the way, the same thing's true in contemporary churches. You go into these contemporary churches, and I've been in them. They're nightclubs. And it's all dark. I mean, I think our building's too dark. We don't turn these lights on because it's too glaring. When this is a fellowship hall, we'll probably turn them on so we can see what we're eating. But even in here, it's a little too dark for me. Why is it that churches are dark? They're darker than nightclubs. Why is that? And you got the band up here on the stage, and you got laser lights and coloured lights and smoke and all that there. And they're all doing all this, and they're dancing around, and they're praising the Lord and all of this. Do you ever hear about the blood of Christ? Do you ever hear about sin and condemnation? Do you ever hear about hell and judgment? Do you ever hear about Jesus dying upon the cross to save us from that? I've seen a lot of that. I've seen the comments on the YouTubes and how our God is great, but they never tell us why He's great. They don't mention substitution. People deny this. They deny that God is a solution to man's problem. They don't mind worshipping, but salvation is a different thing. And the same is true with this last point.